I was the target of the worst boss I've ever had. What happened after I fought back? You won't expect it. When I first started working at that company, I thought it would be a normal job. Nothing special, just a way to pay the bills and maybe get some experience. I wasn't expecting a war zone. But from day one, it was clear my boss had already marked me as her target. At first, it wasn't obvious. She didn't shout or humiliate me openly, at least not right away. Instead, it was those little things that added up, things only someone who had been through it would recognize. I remember the first time she sent me an email correcting a report I had submitted. It was filled with passive-aggressive remarks questioning my competence, without ever directly saying I was incompetent. Then, during meetings, she'd dismiss my ideas like they were nonsense, but never gave any real feedback or alternatives. Other people could speak and she'd listen, but if I tried to contribute, I was quickly shut down or ignored. It felt like I was invisible or worse, a problem to be dealt with. At first, I tried to convince myself that maybe I was just new, that she was hard on everyone, and I needed to prove myself. So I worked harder, longer hours, double-checked every detail, took on extra tasks. I thought if I showed dedication, she would notice. Instead, the coldness turned into something worse. She started setting impossible deadlines just for me, giving me projects no one else wanted. Whenever I struggled to keep up, she made it clear it was my fault, as if I was lazy or incompetent by choice. It didn't take long before things went beyond work. The whispers started. I could hear colleagues muttering when I walked by, things like, "She's terrible at her job," or "I don't know how she's still here." I knew those rumors weren't true, but she had planted them carefully. It was like she was poisoning the whole office against me. Nobody wanted to stick their neck out and defend me, especially with her watching. One day, I found out she had taken credit for a presentation I had spent weeks preparing. She presented it to the board as if it was her idea, completely erasing my involvement. When I confronted her, she just smiled coldly and reminded me who was in charge. That moment, I realized this wasn't just about power at work. This was personal. Despite everything, I refused to break. I started documenting every interaction, saving emails, noting every unreasonable demand, every insult hidden beneath her words. I knew I couldn't fight her openly. She had the reputation, the power, and the allies. But I could protect myself with evidence. The atmosphere in the office changed. People were stressed, tired, some even quit. The once friendly space became tense and silent. It was obvious she ruled with fear. Every day felt like walking on thin ice, not knowing when she'd snap or what she'd do next. The stress affected my sleep and mood, but I kept telling myself I was stronger than this. I wasn't going to let her win. I kept my head down, kept working, and waited for an opportunity. I didn't know when or how, but I knew eventually her own world would start falling apart. Because what goes around, comes around. The atmosphere in the office shifted dramatically after a few months under her reign. It wasn't just personal attacks anymore, and it became a full-on campaign to undermine everything I did and make sure everyone else knew who was in control. One morning, I showed up to find a note on my desk. My access card had been disabled. No explanation, just a simple slip of paper telling me I wasn't allowed to enter certain parts of the building anymore. I had to rely on others to get files, documents, or information that I used to access freely. When I asked HR, they claimed it was a security protocol update, but it happened right after I questioned her about a project's unrealistic timeline. Coincidence? I didn't think so. She also started assigning me tasks with hidden deadlines. For example, she would email me a project with no clear due date, but then in meetings, she'd suddenly act furious that I hadn't completed it, even though I had no idea it was urgent. Once she deliberately moved a meeting with a client to the same time as an internal training session she required me to attend. When I missed the client meeting, she framed it as irresponsibility. Every move was a trap. Her public criticisms became harsher. Instead of subtle digs, she'd openly call out my mistakes in front of the whole department, making sure everyone heard. It wasn't just about work, it felt personal. She targeted everything, my reports, my communication style, even how I dressed. It was like she wanted me to break completely. At the same time, the rest of the team started behaving differently. Some openly avoided me, afraid of being dragged into the conflict. Others whispered behind my back, repeating the narratives she seeded, that I was difficult, unreliable, or even dishonest. I lost the few allies I had. The isolation was suffocating. To make matters worse, there was an incident where she intentionally left me out of a critical email chain about a project I was managing. Because of that, I missed an urgent update and the mistake snowballed. She immediately blamed me for incompetence in the meeting that followed, ignoring the fact that she deliberately excluded me. After that, I realized she was willing to sabotage me at any cost to protect herself. Outside of work, the toll was enormous. I started having trouble sleeping, waking up in the middle of the night replaying every harsh comment, every unfair situation. My energy drained, and I found it harder to concentrate. I tried to talk to close friends, but it felt impossible to explain the depth of the toxicity. It wasn't just stress, it was a slow erosion of my confidence. One day, the final straw came when she announced a surprise audit of my recent projects. The audit team spent weeks scrutinizing every detail, encouraged by her to find faults. The pressure was unbearable. During that time, I overheard her boasting to another manager about how she had engineered the audit to finally get rid of me. The betrayal stung deep, but I refused to show weakness. Instead, I fought back differently. I reached out to a few trusted people in HR and legal, presenting my collected evidence: the emails, the impossible deadlines, the exclusion from communications. I requested a formal meeting to discuss the hostile work environment. It was risky because I didn't know if I could trust the system or if it would just make things worse. The days waiting for a response were agonizing. Every interaction with her became a minefield. She seemed to sense I was making moves behind the scenes and escalated her tactics. She started micromanaging every task, hovering over my shoulder, second-guessing my decisions. She even tried to manipulate clients to question my professionalism. But this time, I wasn't going to stand down. I had proof, allies, and a plan. After I officially reported the hostile environment, things at work turned into a war zone. She knew I was fighting back, and she unleashed everything she had. The meetings became interrogations, the emails more vicious. It wasn't just about power anymore, it was personal, and she wanted to make me pay for trying to stand up. HR started a formal investigation, but it felt like they were dragging their feet, unwilling to upset the balance. Meanwhile, she used every opportunity to isolate me. Colleagues stopped talking altogether. Some even started avoiding the elevator when I got in. It was like I was invisible and untouchable at the same time, stuck in a void where no one could reach me, but no one wanted to. One day, it escalated physically. She cornered me in the hallway, blocking my path with a furious glare. I didn't back down. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words caught in my throat. The tension was thick. It was clear she wanted to intimidate me, but I stood my ground, silent and steady. After a long moment, she stepped aside, but I could feel the storm brewing. The investigation dragged on for weeks. I submitted all the evidence I had collected, and slowly, cracks began to show in her armor. The management couldn't ignore the piles of proof. The rumors and lies she spread started unraveling. But the cost was high. I lost friends. I lost energy. I spent nights awake wondering if I'd made the right choice. The job I once thought was just work had consumed my life. I started searching for other opportunities, preparing for the worst. Then came the day she was called into a meeting with upper management. I wasn't there, but word spread quickly. They confronted her with the evidence. Her calm facade cracked. Rumors surfaced about her own personal problems, a failing marriage, financial troubles, a reputation that was slipping beyond repair. Within a month, she was gone. Not fired publicly, but pushed out quietly. She left behind a trail of broken trust and burned bridges. The office slowly began to breathe again, but the scars remained. As for me, I stayed for a while longer, but it was never the same. The fight had changed me. I wasn't naive anymore. I wasn't the same person who walked in that first day. The damage she did to me, to the team, to the workplace, couldn't be erased overnight. Some wounds healed, others left permanent marks. I don't know if I won. Maybe survival was the best I could hope for.